Yeah.
living. Although we've never done that before, so we didn't have any experience of it. So, but no, they're good. It's all good. It's just very full on and intense.
Yeah. Ah. Well, thank you so very much, Rosie, for taking the time out to do the interview. I appreciate it so much.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. And how did you know about it? Was it through Dave Arcari? When I just wondered how you'd heard of me.
Yeah, actually, when I interviewed Dave, I usually go off and I, do related searches for people.
Uh-huh.
And your name came up and everything. And you seem so very interesting. And I enjoyed your music. It's got a very nice feel to it, very soft rock, kind of feel to it. And I very much enjoyed hearing your voice and everything. You've got a lovely voice.
Oh, that's really kind of you. Thank you.
So tell me, if you don't mind, a little about yourself. How did you get started in music?
Well, I was an art therapist working for a children's charity, working with really severe issues, shall we say, which I found really quite overwhelming. And I'm not made of this stuff, as it turns out. I can't leave that stuff at work. I was coming home with it, and it was relentless. That's my dogs, by the way, in case you hear a groaning in the background. That's Tara. I've got a greyhound who just gets really groany sometimes and rolls over. Yeah, so I'd been doing that kind of work, and my supervisor on the job said, you need to do something different. You need to do something that you really love doing. What do you really love doing that will be relaxing for you? And I couldn't think of anything. And I said, I like singing. I sing about when I'm cooking and making, washing up and things like that. And so she said that she knew a voice coach, and I went to see this woman who ended up becoming a really good friend of mine, who told me right away, because I went to see her to say to her, tell me what your honest opinion is. Do you think there's any point in me, apart from for fun for myself, but is there any point in me coming to singing lessons? Because that's what it was at the time. And Polly said, absolutely. She said, we can do. So she just taught me how to learn to sing in different octaves. I don't know about you, Helen, but when I was younger, I used to sing along to everything that was on the radio.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Very often, yeah. But very often it was the wrong key for me, and I didn't know that. I didn't know anything at all about, singing in the right key. So, and of course I couldn't reach a lot of the notes, or it just didn't work. And then Polly said to me, you can sing in different keys. You don't have to sing in the original key, just change the key. That was a bit of a revelation. Anyway, so that carried on. That was a life-changing moment, I have to say. That carried on, and I had lessons for a while, and then she suggested that I joined the band. I was a singer in the band, and she suggested I make my own band. And so my own band, where we just basically do covers of blues, rock, and soul, we've been on the go now for about 18 years. And a guy who I worked beside in the same kind of work, that hard work at the time, it was all sexual abuse of children. So it was really, really, difficult stuff. And I was saying to Stuart, I was thinking of forming a band. And I said I was looking for a guitar. I was going to be looking for a guitarist. And he said, I play a bit of guitar. And it turns out that his bit, what he called a bit of guitar, he's a phenomenally good guitarist. So that was just luck, just chance conversations about music. So we formed this band, and we haven't played anything for a couple of years because of the pandemic. And we've taken, because I moved house and everything, it's me who organises the gigs. So I haven't been pushing as hard as normally I would be. And I'm also quite wary. I've been very wary of being back in the public circuit again, with people coming right up beside you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And try to use my microphone. That we did Stuart and I, so Stuart's the guitarist, and we formed a jazz duo. years and years ago as well, jazz and blues and covers. And we have done we've done 3 gigs in the last couple of months. And one of them, a man came up and started trying to use my microphone, and I was like, hey. And he said, what's the problem? And I said, have you ever heard of COVID?
Yeah.
You know, it's like playing places where people are having their drink and they just forget all their common sense.
Yeah.
And then I started to write my own songs when I was doing all the, all this other stuff. So I decided I just wanted to have a voice in the world of my own stuff. So that was 2009, the first album came out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was that Lazy and Mellow then?
That was Lazy and Mellow, yes. Well done.
Okay.
You've done your homework. You've
Yeah.
done your homework. Yeah, I wrote the title track for that in France when I was on holiday in France, and we were staying at friends, and he had a guitar, and it was a lovely day, and I just sat in the garden and started to write a song. And it's, it's one of these songs that when I play it, usually in the summertime, people always say, oh, it's one of these songs you can just sit in the sun and have a glass of wine or whatever, a cup of tea or something, just sit there and chill out stuff.
Yeah, I noticed the album was very laid back. Yeah, very nice.
Thank you.
So you were mentioning COVID. Did that kind of put a damper on things for a while then?
Oh yes, absolutely. It stopped everything here. There was nothing public happening. There were no public performances at all. That's my dog again, by the way, groaning. I don't know how well you can hear that, but it's not my stomach, because I have had my lunch.
I can kind of hear the dog. Yeah.
I'll give you a wee look at them before you finish. Yeah, COVID completely killed everything. I mean, I'm very fortunate in that I do not depend on music for my livelihood, but I know other people do. For example, Dave Arcari, who's another Scottish musician who you've interviewed. That's what he does for, full time. That's his livelihood. I can't imagine. And my friend Mark, who's also my producer, that's his livelihood.
Yeah.
So it's very, very difficult. It's been very difficult. It's getting back to normality now, but I think it's just that we're all starting to be more accepting. And plus, of course, we've got the option of being vaccinated now, which is saving a lot of the stress. So, but yeah, COVID, nothing was happening. So the good thing, if anything good could be said to come of COVID, I did a lot of online gigs, which was great because it kept my hand in. My most recent album, which I was going to have a copy of to hand, I do have it in my bag just over there. No, I don't. I gave it to somebody this morning because I was doing an exchange for stuff for the house, the new house. The most recent album was launched in February last year. And of course, that was in the middle of COVID. And usually I have a launch party for my albums, and I couldn't do that for that one. But I was very, very fortunate because that particular one, Where Time Suspends, and it's really, the title of it is really fortuitous in that it was at that time, of its time. That album was voted, or Ian Anderson, who's one of the big Scottish supporters of Scottish musicians, and he also plays worldwide stuff, but he has a BBC radio show here, and he chose it as his featured album of the week. And then the big broadsheet in Scotland did exactly the same. I was a featured album there as well. So that was very nice.
So tell me, what were some of your inspirations? Because of course you do music now. Did you have any inspirations when you were doing your music?
Yeah, I mean, all of my songs are based on experience or observations. And between the third album, which is called Scrapbook, and this one, Where Time Suspends, between these two, I took, was it between these two or was it before Scrapbook? No, it was between these two. I actually did quite a lot of practice on the guitar, because I'm not I wouldn't call myself a guitarist. I can play the guitar, and I'm better now than I was 2 years ago or 3 years ago. But you know, I was always just a strumming, very basic finger picking guitarist. And then I just thought, right, I want to be better at this. I want to be able to support myself instead of always having to rely upon a guitarist to do the fancy things. So I started an online guitar course, and some of the exercises in that inspired, you know, I really particularly like little phrases or things that they made me think of, and these phrases in themselves inspired the melody for a song. So quite a lot of that is on this latest album, or quite a lot of the things, the techniques that I learned, I've employed them, I've redeployed them and used them in the making of this album. So, but yeah, every single song, I was speaking to somebody about this yesterday, every song that I write, it's not just plucked out of the thin air, you know, it's always with personal experience or an observation. Yeah.
So do you have any types of music that you enjoy listening to?
Oh yes. all my musical heroes, I have to say, they pretty much are old school, you know. They're James Taylor was always my favorite. You know, James Taylor, You've Got a Friend.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
Carole King's song, but his take, I used to have, still have it, the album Sweet Baby James.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I've got quite a few of his albums, so I really like James Taylor. I love Carole King, Joni Mitchell, Van Morrison. I'm trying to think who I listen to the most. I probably listen to these people the most, and then I really liked Carly Simon. So it's all people from the 70s, really,
Yeah.
whose music I like the best. I mean, there are, and then I also like people like Led Zeppelin, you know, bands like Led Zeppelin, and things, and I like a lot of blues music. And then in the last 10 or 15 years, I've got quite into jazz. It's got, you know, up to a point, jazz. So fairly eclectic, not much from nowadays, though, I have to say. There's not an awful lot of things that appeal to me about modern music. I hear too much derivative, you know, an awful lot of it is quite derivative, I think, of times gone by, which is hard not to do that, because there are only, what, a dozen or however many notes, I think, there's only an octave of notes with the semitones and things in between. So yeah, probably only so much you can do.
Yeah, I noticed a lot of the music you mentioned. I kind of grew up on, my mom was a big James Taylor fan and everything else, and she was always playing his music along with Bonnie Raitt and a lot of the other musicians and everything. So I grew up listening to a lot of that as well. You mentioned when you were talking about art therapy, and I noticed paintings on your website.
Yeah, I've got lots. The house is full of paintings, and most of them are mine.
So when did you start painting? Have you always painted?
No, when my daughter, so I've got 3 children, and when my daughter was just starting school, so she's the youngest, and I wanted to do something a bit more interesting than the job I was doing. I was a cashier. Is that what I was doing at the time? Working for a building company, doing the wages and things like that. And I just thought, I'm going to use the time when she's at school to do something different. So the local high school at the time allowed adults to go in with the kids into the classes. They don't do it now. I mean, there's so many safeguarding things happening now, but at the time, it wasn't a very popular thing to do. There weren't many other adults in the classes. But I had studied French at school and hadn't completed my final qualification. I had missed a part of it because I wasn't very smart, and I wanted to be with the boyfriend I had at the time. I wanted to be doing something with him that day, so I missed a part of the exam and therefore failed the exam. And And I hadn't developed art either at school. I had only done it till, you know, the very basic level. So I thought I'd like to go and do French and art in the high school. And I went and did my higher, which is that the level of qualification you do when you're about 16 here. So I went and did my French and art hires and really, really enjoyed it. And I continued the French for the following year as well, but the art just kept going. And then I ended up going to art college as an adult, a mature student, to use that euphemism, and graduated from art college in 1997. And the year that I was graduating, I had quite a lot of shows, quite a lot of work in selection only exhibitions, in high profile exhibitions. And I was going to go down the route of being an artist. And but I was really fascinated by psychology and how people use art, you know, using their minds. I don't know if you're aware of this man. He may be really famous in America, Henry Darger.
Mhm.
You heard of him? Yeah.
Yes.
Well, we had a visiting lecturer came to give a talk at art college in my final year, and his speciality was the art of this outsider artist called Henry Darger, or Darger. Inside this man's world, Henry Darger's world, was completely incredibly interesting. And he created a whole world, you know, within him, within his head and within his room. He was a loner. Well, you know that, but maybe some of the people listening won't know that. So I think there's a museum dedicated to his work in Chicago, because I think he grew up in Chicago, or he lived in Chicago. Anyway, that sparked my interest in psychology and the use of art in psychology. And I was going to be an artist because I wasn't being offered a funded place as an art therapy student. And it's a very expensive course to do, because you have to have personal therapy every week for the duration of the course. And then at the last minute, I was offered one of the very few funded places. So I did this whole, you know, the road less traveled. I was going down this route, and suddenly it became that route.
Yeah.
So that's where the art therapy came from. And it's a very interesting profession or discipline. I think the use of all these therapies, play therapy, art therapy, music therapy, dance therapy, are so useful for people. Great tools.
Yeah, music and art and everything. The way that they can help people heal and everything else is very amazing.
It's really powerful.
Yes, very powerful. Especially music and sound and everything.
Yes, I think if I was doing it all again, I would probably become a music therapist, actually, because music is it's before you're even born. You're feeling movement when you're in the womb. The fetus is associating, you know, you're getting pulse of music, or you're having, people play calming classical music while they're pregnant, so their baby has that input. So yeah.
Yeah, I know some women, when they're pregnant, they'll take the little headphones and they'll put them up to the baby and everything so that the baby can hear the music.
And I think it's been proven that depending on the music, the baby's movements are different within the womb. You know, I think they have done research into that. So it's really interesting, really fascinating.
But with the picking up and everything now, do you have any gigs coming up or any performances?
I have not been. I was supposed to do the album. I was going to do a delayed launch party for Where Time Suspends, and I had that booked. I'd been asked to play in a local folk club, which I've done a headline act there once a year, every year for the last, well, apart from last year, for the last, so many years. And they'd asked me to play again in February, and I thought that'd be great. We'll make that the launch party for Where Time Suspends. And then they lost their bass at the beginning of the year, so that wasn't happening. The place where the club is based didn't change hands, but it changed function. So they were no longer able to do that, and they can't get an alternative venue. So at the moment, I don't think I've got anything lined up. I think there's quite a lot of irons in the fire. Well, I know there are quite a lot of irons in the fire, but I haven't been actively looking for anything, and I've only been approached by one or two people about things which we're still discussing. So I did do something very nice last year. We got, because I've been doing this online home songs. Now, Dave Arcari plays on home songs as well.
Yes.
And because I'd been doing that, and I'd been in discussion just before COVID kicked in with the man who organises it, David Fee, who's an absolute star, a really nice person, lovely person. And we'd been talking about us going over there and doing a little tour of the entire peninsula, which on a map of Scotland looks like it's about an hour's drive away. 5.5 hours later,
Oh,
it's a long, long way. You've got to go all the way up to the top of this peninsula to come all the way back down it, and the roads are small roads, but it's great, wonderful place. Anyway, Dave had asked us to do a little tour there last September, just when things were starting to open up again. So that's what we did. We did a little tour, and we shared the billing with another musical pal of mine called Norman Lamont. And we had such a lovely time, really, really a great time. We played in people's houses, we played in a little music festival in the afternoon in one place, played in a restaurant on Sunday, and it was just marvellous. It was really hugely enjoyable. In fact, Norman has been in the business for much longer than I have. He's been a musician all his life, and he said after that it's the best gigs that he's ever had. They were such fun. I think it's like giving a drowning, or not a drowning man, but a man who's starved of water, a drink of water as well, you know, but had nothing live for so long, that suddenly we had 4 in a row, and the feedback from people was so incredibly great. And folks singing along to stuff and buying the CDs, buying the vinyl, you know, it was really nice.
So if you don't mind me asking, do you have any stories from on the roads or any of your gigs?
I can't think. If I'd known you were going to ask me that, I would have given it a bit of thought earlier. I don't know if there's anything that's particularly recountable, because that's the only tour that I've ever done. You know, sorry, I'm putting it in inverted commas or speech brackets because parentheses, because it was a tour, but it was a very small tour. You know, it was only four venues, 4 gigs in 3 days. But gigs themselves, there's lots of funny stuff. I can tell you a story, not about my music, but about being in the band, and it may not translate well, but and I sing in France as well. When we go to France, we usually go to France every year, so I do gigs over there, and I'll do some songs in French to, you know, to sort of appeal to French people, because I can speak French, so that's fine. In fact, one of the latest songs on this new album is called Oops a Daisy, and I had to write a French chorus for it, because the first time I was going to play it was going to be in a gig in France.
Oh, okay.
So a gig that I did as a benefit in order to get a local cat neutered.
Oh.
Little Tigri, who's no longer with us, I'm afraid, but he was our holiday cat. He was a lovely little boy, but he needed to be neutered because he was becoming very unpleasant with other cats, and he was such a loving cat normally. So the local vet, who I'd been in constant contact with, I said I would, she said, we need you to do a gig here, because she really likes my music. We need you to do a gig here. I said, well, Karine, if you organise it, I'll do it. And I said, and if you organise it and I do it, all the proceeds can go towards having Tigri neutered. So that's what we did. And at the end of it, she said to me, why don't we do this all the time? And you can have all the local cats neutered. And I was like, well, I think people might get a bit tired of seeing Rosie Nimmo playing every week that she's in France, in the local area. So, but that wasn't what I was going to, yeah. What we did, so because I sing in French, So the full band were playing in one of the local music venues here in Edinburgh. And the French rugby team were over that weekend playing Scotland at rugby, and all their fans, and it's always a fantastic atmosphere when the rugby's on. Just, it's just one of these things that's full of good vibes. And so we were playing in this place called Whistle Binkies on a Saturday night. And there's 5 of us in the blues, rock and soul band. And so it's all, blues, rock and soul. It is what it says on the tin. And all these French guys came in, and I knew they were French because they were carrying their scarves and they were doing all this sort of Gaelic thing. And I turned to Stuart and I said to him, right, La Vie en Rose. And he said, no, we're not doing La Vie en Rose. It's a blues gig. And I said, no, we should do it. We should do it, definitely. No, I'm not going to do that. And I started singing it a cappella. So he had to join in. And the rest of the band joined in as well, because it's quite straightforward. And my husband plays it. Tommy plays bass. And he plays that when we're in France. We'll do La Vie en Rose together. So I started doing La Vie en Rose, and all the bar joined in.
Oh,
whole bar. Include not just the French people, but everybody. And it was one of these really magical moments, where everybody was just so, it was a very loving, happy moment. So the next, I went up and spoke with these guys at the end of at the break. And I said to them, if you're still around tomorrow night, we're playing in another place tomorrow night. And here they showed up halfway through the set. We had just started our second set and we were doing Sweet Home Chicago. And they came in and they did what's it called? A conga. They did a conga around the bar to Sweet Home Chicago, winding in and out everybody. It was really busy. And they came up to us and one of them put his hat on my head and the other one put his scarf around Stuart's neck. And these were my 2 very best gigs with the Covers Blues Band. Thanks to the French people who were there.
Oh, wow.
Merci à mes amis français.
That sounds incredible.
Just fun. It's fun.
Geez. There's nothing like a good road trip and a good gig to get things going.
Mm-hmm. Well, what we do in the entire gigs last year of my own songs, one of my songs is called Time Clock. It's on the second album, Home. And it has a sing-along part. And the sing-along part is just a noise. It's just da 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 da. And for some reason, I'd always used to say to people when we were performing that song, imagine so I have this whole thing where I cast this, imagine we're in a beer cellar, a German beer cellar. We're all dressed in lederhosen, and I'll say to people, right, just imagine, look around you, everybody here is dressed in lederhosen. And then we've all got our big pints of, steins of beer, whatever. And so that you've got to sing along and you've got to imagine that you're swinging this beer back and, side to side. And then there's that little pause. So there's da 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 da. So that part, I'd never done this before. And I said, slap your thighs, slap your thigh in that pause. Well, it was so funny because we had people doing that every time. So every time we've done that song since then, that's the bit that happens with this thigh slapping bit. And it's just a lot of fun. People just laugh and, you really enter into the spirit of it.
Oh, wow. So real quick, is there anything you want people to know about your albums or anything upcoming that you would like people to know?
Well, I think the key thing is to keep an eye on the website, my website, which is rosienimmo.com, because as I say, there are irons in the fire just now, and I think quite a few things will be coming back onto the website again. I think there'll definitely be things happening soon. I can go, no, I can't because it's not in my bag anymore because I was going to say I could go and get the album, but I can't do that because I don't have one. This was me. I was going to be so well prepared for this today, Helen. And as I say, everything got thrown out of my head because of the stuff that was happening in the new house. So yes, all of my albums, music of mine is available to listen to initially on my website. And if you like what you hear, I have albums, I have CDs for sale, and I have music for sale digitally on Bandcamp. And I also have vinyl, but I can't send vinyl in the post. As a massage or a sort of vanity project, I got the third album made in vinyl as well, because I really like the cover.
Oh
I
yeah.
like the album cover. All of the album covers are my own artwork, by the way. So, so yeah, I got that made in vinyl. And the people who have it, quite a few of them have actually just framed the cover and have it up on the wall as a framed piece of work, which is very nice.
Real quick, I do want to ask because like I said earlier, you do have the paintings on your website.
Yes, I have some. Some of them are no longer. So some of them are away, but others, there's lots of others there that I have that aren't on the website.
How much do you charge for those, or how much are they if people want to buy your artwork?
They all vary. I can't think what particular ones there are there, but they're not hugely expensive, you know, they're not. But the only thing is, if it's something that's with glass, it's too hard. I have experience of sending a big glazed picture to someone in Canada, and by the time he got it, it was smashed to smithereens. So it's the only time I've ever, the actual painting inside the frame was saved, but the glass was completely smashed. So, and the mount was damaged as well. But it was a cousin of a friend of mine, and he was very, very, very keen to have this picture as it was in the frame with the glass, because I said I can take the picture up and out and roll it up and send it to you, and you can get it framed. No, 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 I want it as it is. Okay. So, but some of them, so I can do, if it's something that's unframed, that's much easier. If it's getting sent somewhere, which I would imagine generally it will be. But I can't give an example unless somebody asks me about something specific on the website. I could tell them then.
But those are very lovely paintings.
Oh, thank you. What I can do is I can take you for, how much time do we have left, Helen?
Oh, we have plenty of time.
Okay, well, I'll take you for a little tour. Now, bear in mind, this is not my home. This is my home, but it's not my house. So it's not furnished in the way that I would have it furnished. It's not laid out in the way that I would have it laid out. I'm just going to show you some of my pictures. So these ones here, I don't know if you can see them. Oops.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Little prints. So these are little prints. This is Louis.
Oh, hello there.
And this is Hamish, who you can't make out because he's a black fluffy cat. That's another one of my pictures up on the wall there. This is another print of mine. Oh, sorry, well, Hamish just decided to play with the cable from the computer. That's another one of mine. There's nothing else in this room. I have lots and lots of them stashed away. That's a print of mine. I do a lot of printmaking as well. So these are mine. I don't know if you can see. That's Louis, a little drawing of Louis. And I print. It's a watercolor. Another watercolor. Another print. I don't know if you're getting to see this because I can't see the screen, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, actually, I'll show you. I've got some prints here, actually, just sitting. I've taken these out because we've just had basically linoleum put on the new floor in the new house.
Oh,
and the man who did it, we were talking about art because I said to him, I use linoleum offcuts for printmaking. So he'd asked to see some examples because he was quite intrigued because he fancied doing that himself. So I took him along some examples to show him yesterday, and they're just sitting here on the table. So here is, so we used to have a fun fair in Portobello, and this is a lino print of that, the waltzers in the fun fair. And this is the same plate, but done with a painted background.
Oh, okay. That's
and a different, I've got another coloured painted background. I just play.
Oh, I like that.
Thank you. I just play with things. And this is one of my old cats. This was Grizzle. She was a lovely wee thing.
Oh,
So I know
yes,
she
that's
was
beautiful. I know cat lovers who would love that.
uh-huh. Well, that's another lino print, and that's a tiny little thing that I just did with a little scrap of lino that I had left, and I
Mm.
just made it into a tiny little cat print. But Grizzle, this one of Grizzle, it was just so like her, you know, the way cats just sometimes sit and turn to the side and hold their head. So yeah, I used to do lots and lots of pictures of cats actually, because I love, you know, I used to have 3 cats.
Oh yeah, so did I. I had, yeah, unfortunately, Romeo and Caesar passed away a year apart.
It's so hard when that happens.
I know.
It's just life, isn't it? You know, it's built in with animals. You know that you're almost certainly going to predecease them. They're going to predecease you. There's a song on my on Where Times Is Spent called Heaven. I don't
Yes.
know if yes. Well, that was the story to that is that we had moved to an area that I didn't particularly like, but I was sort of settling in there. And then it was very much suburbia, and I don't really do suburbia. And then we got a kitten. We hadn't had a kitten for such a long time because we were taking in rescue cats a lot of the time. And I just thought it'd be really nice to have a kitten because they're such fun. So we got this kitten and we called him Sid. My dad was called Sid. And my dad died when he was too young. So Sid was my, you know, he was my beloved kitten, and he was 7 months old, and he was killed as a result of someone local who had left a trap out for rats. He was caught in it and he had died. He had to be put down as a result of his injuries. He was only 7 months old, and it was the whole thing. It was much worse than that because it went on. It was a very protracted, slow time that he spent in the trap in the rain, and he managed to drag himself home with these incredible injuries. So I don't think I've ever cried so much in my life as I did with Sid. And my mum had just died 2 years prior to that, and I don't think I'd cried as much when my mum had died, but maybe a lot of it was the stuff, you know, with the Sid crying was related to her.
Yeah.
And I ended up, when I was a wee girl, I was told that animals didn't go to heaven. And I used to think, well, what's the point? What's the point in trying to get to heaven then? You know, there's no point.
I know. I've heard
Animals
that too.
yeah. So so I wrote this song called Heaven, and so a lot of the words in it are quite sad. You know, Sid was such a special boy, and, but putting a little sort of smile on it. You know, I don't want to go to heaven if they don't let cats and dogs in. Say no to birds and dolphins. I don't want to go. Would you want to go to heaven?
No, not if
the,
there's no animals. Oh.
exactly. So I did that once again in the Kintyre, in this little tour we did of Kintyre last year, thanks to David Fee. I did that in the restaurant gig that we did at lunchtime on Sunday. And this young girl was sitting right at the front of the audience. And I thought, oh, this stuff's not going to appeal to her, you know, we're a bunch of oldies. She'll be much more into this mostly livelier stuff. And she sat all the way through it. And when we did Heaven, she just sat there, quite the thing, because I'd given a bit of a background to it as well. And at the end of it, she said, it's my mum who runs this place. She said, she has a gig here every week, at least once a week. She said, you're the best gig I've ever seen.
Oh.
And I thought, oh, that was so nice that she remarked upon that song. She said, I absolutely loved that song, Heaven. And then someone else stopped me and said, I really loved your song, Heaven. So I thought, these are all people who are animal lovers, you know, who really relate to it. So that's what I'm saying. I choose things just, you know, material for songs. Oh, that'll do another song.
Yeah.
I think most songwriters are like that.
Oh. Yeah, that
musical things. Helen, are you a musician yourself?
I do play, and I'll be honest, I'm still learning the
Uh-huh.
fiddle.
Oh, fab. Yeah,
Yeah. And I very much enjoy it. It's very relaxing and it kind of takes your mind off the world around you.
yeah,
That's the
absolutely.
that's the nice thing about music and everything else is so much can be going on around you and it makes you, I know it might not sound crazy to you, but it makes you feel like nothing else can touch you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You're
It
invincible in that little bit of time. Yes.
Yes, yes. And that's what I was kind of saying when I was interviewing um a few of the other musicians and everything. It's like you've taken a piece of yourself and immortalized it in your music
Mm-hmm.
because
And sorry,
un-
yeah. Even
even long after you're gone, your music is still there. There are pieces of you
right.
still there.
Yeah. It's your legacy. That's what Mark always says to me. This is my legacy. And it's true. If you think, and it's really quite humbling actually, if you're a musician and you write your own stuff, to think that your music means something to other people. You know, it becomes part of people's story or part of their experience of life. You know, because if you think about, we can all relate our favorite songs to things that happened in our life at the time. You know, and it will take you back. It's like Proust's Madeleine. You know, you get the smell of Madeleines and you're transported back to that moment. So I think it's the same with music. It just becomes a part of who you are, part of life's just. Carol King said it all when she said life is a rich tapestry of life, because it is our part of our tapestry, isn't it?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, Rosie, thank you so much for doing this interview. I appreciate it so
It's a
much.
pleasure. It's a pleasure.